Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Esports Racing Canada lap guide video. Today we are in the MX5 at the Charlotte Roval. This was a very fun combination, but was also a very tricky combination. So I'm going to show you the hot lap, then we'll jump straight into the lap guide. Alright, so now onto the lap guide part of the video. Heading into turn 1 here, I found it to be a pretty tricky corner, just because you are turning before braking, and the wall does kind of creep up on you on entry and on exit. But I was braking just before the one board here. You want to be as close to this wall as possible on the right. It is pretty daunting when you're going 150 kilometers an hour and the wall starts to creep up on you, so getting as close to the wall as possible is always good. But yeah, turning the wheel and then onto the brakes. I found holding the brakes just a little until you can feel the car rotating, just big trail brake there. Then I found downshiftting right before I got back on throttle and onto the apex of the curb. Gave me some more rotation, and I was able to keep rotating on the exit, and just clipping just about hitting the blue one and clipping the red and white one there, but then just making sure you're not too hard on throttle understeering wide, otherwise you will hit the wall there. But keeping the wheel turned and making sure you get as close as possible to the wall there. This next corner here, it's a corner, but you can take it flat out. Turning in just at this light post, green light here, and then any later, and I found I would drift a bit wide, and it would just slow me down. So turning in at this green light was good for me. You can also use this banking here to your advantage. There is a little crest right about here, but the banking compensates for that. So exiting this corner, not going out super wide because you need to think ahead to the next corner. Is a right-hander, so you want to be as far to the left as possible. So bringing the car to the left-hand side as fast as possible, getting it right beside this blue and white line here, turning in just as the grass ends and right before it begins here. And then this corner is very tricky and is all about patience. I had many attempts at this corner and got it wrong, but I was trying different things, and the best thing I found was to kind of just let the car rotate on its own, not doing anything, not really putting too much brakes, if any, mid-corner. Otherwise I'd just get too much rotation or I would overslow the car, and then adding any throttle would just give me understeer. So as you'll see coming through this corner, light on the brakes as you turn in, clipping this apex here, downshifting just after you can see I blip the throttle, getting the brakes, and just little throttle, little brakes, not too much, otherwise will understeer. I was just doing that to keep the speed up, and you can get on throttle right about halfway just over halfway through the corner actually, right before you get to this apex. There is some banking here, you can see, so you can use that to your advantage. Just keeping the wheel turned, turning it more right as you are about to get more on throttle, making sure you rotate the car as much as possible while your speed is low. Exiting all the way out wide, you can use this. It won't give you a 1x or an off track. That's the same thing, won't give you a slowdown or a 1x, sorry. This corner here, turning in just before this red and white striping begins. There's a couple ways you can take this corner. You can either keep it tight and go wide, but that will make it so the next corner is a bit tighter. But I was kind of experimenting, and the way I took it seemed to be the fastest. So yeah, turning in the red and white, and then using this wall on the right here as my braking reference. If I go into cockpit view, if I go back a bit, you can see it's just on the very edge of my screen here. I used it as when it passes the bezel, I start to apply the brakes, right just after there. Downshifting pretty much right away, just to get the rotation as soon as possible. Running all the way out to this blue and white line, opening up this corner as much as possible. Light hands, keeping the steering with what the car would like to do, getting back on throttle. In this corner, you don't have to bring it to the right. You can drift wide. I could have gone a bit wider there, but it is kind of tricky to keep the rest of the way flat out, which you'll see when I hit play here. But yeah, like keeping the car in this area can go a bit tighter, and it should be alright. But yeah, keeping the pedal flat through here, turning in fairly early, getting close to the blue cones here. And I'm using the end of the blue cones as my liftoff reference. You don't have to add brakes through here. You can, if you would like, you can go a bit deeper on throttle here and then turn in and add some brakes and get the car rotated. But I found just coasting and then putting some maintenance throttle in between was working for me. Running out wide to the blue line, getting as close to that wall as possible, then getting back on throttle before you even reach this wall here, getting as close as possible to those tires here, and then coming up on exit. It is a bit deceiving because you're in cockpit view and you see this big wall coming towards you. You might think you're going to hit it, but this banking will save you most of the time as long as you don't understeer like crazy by throttling too much before you get to that apex. So yeah, you kind of just have to experiment, but you shouldn't hit the wall if you throttle at the right time. You won't hit it if you throttle at the right time. But dipping down to the bottom of the track as fast as possible and coming along here, you can get like your entire car pretty much onto the curtain of the track. I think that's what it's called. But I think the rule is if all 4 tires go over, you'll get a slowdown. So making the track as short as possible is a lot quicker through here, at least half a tenth, maybe a tenth, including the next spot. But coming into the first set of chicanes here, braking at the 2 board as close as possible to the wall here. This is one of the trickiest corners, or 2 corners on the track, in my opinion. The curbs are massive, so if you hit them right, you'll be good. But if you hit them at the wrong angle with some brakes or throttle, you might go a little wide. So it just takes some practice to get up to speed through here. But braking at the 2, hard on the brakes up to around 80%, downshifting to second gear. On this apex, I found it was quickest for me to go over the blue curb, getting all the car over there just to get some help with the rotation. And then as soon as I'm over that, I flick it back to the right with some steering, just about clipping this blue one here. I found if you hit it too much, you would just go all the way wide into the wall, but too little and I would just understeer off. So I found as soon as I'm over this first curb, adding some brakes and flicking the steering back to the right just clipping this blue curb here was good, and making sure you get back on throttle as soon as possible, so you get a good exit onto this back straight, sort of. And here you can cut this. I don't know where the cutoff line is, but I was just coming back up onto the banked part of the track right before this red part ended, and once again doing the same thing, having the car not all the way over the blue and white line, but having the right tires just almost over. Coming into the final chicane, making sure your car is lined up with this blue and white line as best as possible. My braking reference here was around this black line here in the track, and somewhere where the line kind of straightens out, or at least it looked like that for me in cockpit view, but around this black line here. It depends if you're going to third or second. Either worked. I found second. I was able to get a good exit, and I was able to utilize the engine braking in this car, which is pretty important just because the brakes aren't great. So if you can, using the lower gear to help with the engine braking is always good. But this one is also fairly tricky because you may seem like you want to turn in very early. It is a long corner, kind of, and if you do turn in too early, you will get an off track on the first part of the corner. I don't really know what the rule is specifically. It might be if all four tires or the midline go over the blue, then you'll get an off track. But yeah, onto the corner, into the braking, hitting around 75-80%, turning in, and going all the way over this curb as much as possible, and then getting back on throttle fairly early, as you can see here, before you hit the curb. And a good tip that I learnt was for any sausage curb. Another example is the third corner, second chicane at Imola. The second part of the second chicane specifically, the curb there is fairly big, and similar to this one, except this one is quite a bit bigger. If you can get on throttle before you even hit the curb, it lifts the front end of the car up, so it minimizes the impact between the front wheels and the curb. So if you can do that, I highly recommend doing that, which I do in this case, and it just helps with not sending the car into the wall. So you can see I get back on throttle before I hit the curb, and then this one, the same thing. I'm already at full throttle, so it doesn't really matter. It's more so just managing the throttle so I don't go wide into the wall. But again, you can clip this blue curb and you'll be fine. And then in second gear through there and up to third onto the first corner again. So yeah, that concludes this lap guide for this week. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you improve from it. Once again, if you have any feedback for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And so yeah, if you want to drop some feedback in the comments, I'll be sure to respond and definitely take it into account for next time. So thanks for watching.